our next speaker has been programming since he was 12, which was what he says 16 years ago, so you can do the math. He's been doing it professionally for 5 years now, and he's going to be talking to us. We asked him, what's a cool project you've done lately? And he told us about a home automation project, which is actually what this talk is based on. So if you are interested in automating your home, playing a little bit with Internet of Things, this talk is going to be great for you. Join me in giving a big round of applause to Luke Bonaccorsi.
Hello, I'm just got to make this work. Wrong one. Cool, that should be coming out the right place. Cool. Right, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. You had a good day? A good 2 days? Nearly done. Right, so yeah, if you want to follow along with the slides, they are at slides.lukeb.co.uk/JSConf CO 2018. Just in case any of you at the back can't see or you have limited vision or whatever. So first up, I want to talk about a thing called Global Diversity CFP Day. It's a day where around the world people hold workshops to help people become speakers and help them submit their first CFP. We've heard a few times that that we need more representation from South America. I think it'd be great if some people could host some workshops around, help your fellow South Americans get into public speaking. It's aimed at underrepresented groups to get a more diverse sort of group of speakers speaking around the world. The call for organizers has just opened. If you go to globaldiversitycfpday.com, you can find it there. It's on Saturday, the 2nd of March, 2019. So if you know about speaking, please sign up to organize or help out an event. If you're interested in speaking, please go along to one of them. The whole reason for them is to help people get into it. And then I have a couple of content warnings. So I have videos and loud noises, the loud noises being the bit where I shout at my laptop. The content warnings will appear down here, so keep an eye out there if you think that animation or videos will have an effect on you, or the loud noises. So I'm Luke Bonaccorsi. I'm a software engineer at Sky Betting Gaming in the UK. We're an online gambling company. It's fully legal and regulated in the UK, so it's fine. So I live in Leeds in the north of England. Whoops. Gotta wait for that. I organise the local meetup, Leeds.js, and Tanya earlier was talking about how great community is, and I really, really love community. So again, I want to say if you can, please get involved in your local JavaScript community or programming community because they always need your help. Whether it's organizing, speaking, just attending, like having attendees is a very important thing. So yeah, and then I tweet at LukeBUK, I blog at lukeb.co.uk, and to give some context to this talk, I'm a hardware noob. I know very little about it. I live in fear of burning my house down all the time, so that gives you an idea. And I'm lazy. You saw that slide earlier, but if there's a way that I can not do something, I won't do it. What's the point? And because I'm lazy, automation's a great thing. I can just automate away the boring things, and then I don't have to do them. It's great. In everyday life, we're surrounded by automation. So there's stuff, and we don't really realize it. And there's stuff like traffic lights, automatic doors, motion sensing lights, automatic hand dryers, and ATMs, cash machines. And that's just the stuff that I noticed and paid attention to today, which shows how prevalent it is in our everyday lives. And then as consumers, we're embracing automation more and more in our homes. Whether it's heating with stuff like the Nest thermostat, or lighting with the Philips Hue bulbs, And even IKEA have got a really cheap set of bulbs, and there's cheap sets of these things coming out more and more frequently now because the technology is more and more available. And then you get smart door locks so that you can control it from your phone, or it can detect that you're close to the house and unlock it for you. And these things usually have APIs so that you can interact with them. Whether it's you write a script and you can run it from the command line so you can feel like a hacker, or you build a really beautiful dashboard by pulling everything together and serve it so that you can just have loads of buttons and press them all. And over the past few years, there's been what I've called a bot uprising. They're quickly becoming a bigger part of our lives, and they're helping us with everyday things. And these can be connected directly to a single chat system, whether it's Slack or Facebook Messenger. And there are no modules for that to happen, which means that you can quickly build a single-purpose bot. But then there are frameworks, so if you want a multi-purpose bot that connects to multiple chat systems, you can use those as well. So Microsoft have got one called Bot Framework, or there's one called BotKit as well. And you can make bots to do multiple different things easily because of these things. And then virtual assistants are becoming more and more popular. So Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant, and they're basically bots, but a lot smarter because they're backed by massive data centers that have everything in the world ever. And they're in our homes and helping us again with our everyday lives. So you've got the Echo, the HomePod, and the Google Home. And they help us out with things like reading the news that you're interested in, playing music and buying things. And the uprising's only just beginning. We're doomed. It's going to carry on. They're going to become far, far more common. So in mid-2014, I started working on my own automation chatbot. It's called Woodhouse. It's named after the butler on the TV show Archer, if you've ever seen it. So I was going to name it Jarvis, but that's really overdone, and it was going to be way worse than Jarvis. So I thought, what's a worse butler? Woodhouse. It's all open source. It's written in JavaScript. It runs on Node. It actually sits on a Raspberry Pi behind my television. It's MIT licensed because why not have it do what you want with it? And it's all up on GitHub. It's modular and extensible. So the core is just a router that passes commands through it with some extra bits like broadcasting, scheduling, and preference storage. And then there are two types of modules. So there are plugins that do pretty much whatever you want them to do. So whether that's replying with texts, or connecting to APIs, or interacting with hardware. And then interfaces, which are your ways to communicate, which is usually a chat system. So you can use no modules, as I mentioned, and then you just have a little bit of glue code to make it work. And then, so in the beginning, I only wanted to download movies. So I was sat with a coworker at my previous company, waiting for a meeting to start. It was late. And he had his iPads, and he was VPN'd into his Raspberry Pi at home, and was just queuing up movies to download. And I thought that seemed like a lot of effort. I knew of software that could download stuff for me, and I knew it had an API, and I thought it'd be great if I could just have a bot that I could send a message to saying, I want this film. It would go off, find it, send me an IMDb link saying, is this the film you meant? If that's it, I say yes. It goes off and downloads it for me. But before that, I managed to automate my lamps instead. I can't remember exactly how. I just found pictures of when I bought the plug, no context. So this is me automating my lamps. So I send a message, the lamps turn off. I send another message in a minute. And they turn back on. And when I first did this, I was sat giggling to myself because as web developers, we don't get a real-world effect out of what we do. You make a button move or you change pages or something. Whereas doing this, I felt like a god. I was making things happen. So this is what I used to do it. This is just a plug that I bought from China. It costs about £15, $15, something like that. And I have to use an adapter for it because it has the Chinese plug on the back, and that doesn't work in the UK, so it means it's really safe. This won't burn my house down at all, I swear. But then I found out that you could telnet into it. So you could like poke around and get some commands on it. But you couldn't do a whole lot. And then I found a Google group that had found the SSH password because it was hard-coded on it. Luckily, it didn't ever go outside of my network, so that's fine. But by logging in through SSH, I found out that it runs OpenWRT, which is a router firmware. It's a small Linux distribution. And it's got a web server on it. So I could drop scripts onto it and basically make it have an API. So I have a script that you hit it with one parameter and it turns the relay inside it on, and then you hit it with a different parameter and it turns the relay inside it off. And then there's a third one to tell you whether it's on or off, and then another page to set some information about it, to say where it is and some tags and stuff like that. And then every 2 minutes it has a script that broadcasts saying, I'm here, and then Woodhouse picks that up and I know what plugs I have. And I use this every day, not whilst I'm here because it's pointless, but I will get off the bus to get home and just pull out my phone, send a message, and I walk into my house, the lamps are on, I'm not treading over anything that's been put through the door, and it's great. And then I began adding other little things. So I eventually added the TV and film downloaders, but I never used them because Netflix became a thing, and it's great. Cheers, Trent. And you can use it. I use it to check if websites are up, and then reminders so I can put a pizza in the oven and send a message to remind me to take it out the oven because burnt pizza's terrible. And then I started having all these ideas of things I could do. I could get to control everything. But I started to rewrite it instead. It was a mess. I was really excited about what I was doing and just throwing code at it, and then I didn't understand how a lot of it worked. Because I knew the structure of it, I could rewrite it. I got to use ES6 because Node started supporting it at that point, because we'd had the whole IO.js thing, which was a great thing. And it all just worked. It was fantastic. And then the first time I gave this talk, back in November 2016, I wanted to do something new. So I automated my curtains. So I send a message and they start opening. And then I send another message and they'll close. And it's really loud and quite creepy looking. I don't know what it looks like from the outside. Maybe as if it's haunted. So yeah, it's fun. I had to buy a ladder for that. There's if you see over in the corner, I bought that specifically to automate my curtains. I make sensible decisions. So this is the hardware that I used for it. It's some plastic wheels, some string, a servo, a plastic box, and some stuff to attach it to the curtain rail. And it basically works like this. So the wheels rotate, and the string has a curtain attached to either sides, and basically whichever way it rotates, it either pulls it open or pulls it closed. It's not great, but it works. And then for the brains of it, it's this. It's an ESP8266. It's a microcontroller like an Arduino. It's got Wi-Fi, and it costs a couple of pounds, a couple of dollars from China. I use a firmware for it called Mongoose OS, which means I can write JavaScript on hardware. I wrote about 75 lines of code, and that meant that I had endpoints to open and close and get the status of my curtains, the ability to configure it to say where they were, and to add some tags, and then broadcasting so that Woodhouse could pick it up. But 75 lines to control my curtains is an amazing, it's a weird phrase to say. And there's so much cool stuff for doing JavaScript with hardware. So I mentioned Mongoose OS, but then there's Johnny 5 and Cylon.js, which they work on Raspberry Pis and Arduinos. They mean that you have to have it connected to your computer to do it. And well, if it's on Raspberry Pi, you don't. But for an Arduino, you do. And then you've got development boards with JavaScript built in, so it's a first-class experience. So the Esperinos and the Tessel boards, they're a bit more expensive than buying like an Arduino, but to get that first-class experience, it's worth it. There's loads more on the web. There's more stuff that's come out, and I can't remember the name of it, but if you look at JavaScript hardware on Google, I'm sure you'll find plenty. And as web developers, knowing JavaScript, this makes it really easy to dive into hardware and to give it a go. And then I got bored during Christmas in 2016, and I started shouting at my laptop. And it wasn't out of frustration. It was so that I could get voice control.
Woodhouse. Turn off lamps.
Chair lamp has been turned off. TV lamp has been turned off. Couch lamp has been turned off.
Woodhouse. Turn on lamps.
Chair lamp has been turned on. TV lamp has been turned on. Couch lamp has been turned on.
So it's got the worst reply voice ever. It's terrible. But I used to run Linux on my computer, and that was the default in a program called Festival, which is text-to-speech on Linux. But it's really cool that I can shout at my laptop and control my lamps. That's amazing. So for offline hot word detection, so that it's not constantly sending everything I say to some server somewhere, I use a thing called Snowboy. You go to their website, you can train a model by saying whatever you want your phrase to be 3 times. So I went to the website, said Woodhouse 3 times, and got a little model, dropped it into my project, and then I use Google Speech API for the main part of it because you get 60 minutes free a month. You could use Azure or Amazon instead, but all of them have a lot more data than I'll ever have. I tried using the offline things, and it just didn't recognize anything I said because they're generally trained for American accents. But this runs a separate process, and it will take what you want, take what you say, send it off to get it translated, come back, and then send it to the main hub of Woodhouse to do the actions. And eventually I will have Raspberry Pi scattered around my house with microphones and speakers so that I can just shout around my house and it'll do stuff. And so you may have heard of nests. I mentioned it a bit earlier. So I'm going to introduce a brand new entry into the smart heating arena today. It's called SET. It's a revolutionary JavaScript-based Wi-Fi-enabled thermostat. It's got incredible timeless design, and it's crafted from the best materials that money can buy. You can boost and pause your heating. You can set a minimum temperature so that when it gets really cold, your pipes don't freeze. And it's got an API so that you can control it in set settings. And it's, of course, connected to Woodhouse because why would I do anything else? So this is what my thermostat used to look like. It's not great. It was really inaccurate. I lived in a rented house. I couldn't just take it off the wall and replace it with something that I wanted. But I took the plastic wheel off the front and found that it had a potentiometer behind it and a little notch so that I could control it. So what I did was I 3D printed a wheel that can attach to that. And the wheel attaches to a servo. And then basically it just turns either to the maximum temperature or to the minimum temperature to turn it on or off. And then I 3D printed a case to hold all the parts. And then it just sits on the front of the thermostat like that. It's got a schedule on it so that it can be timed properly. It checks the temperature every couple of seconds and makes the decision whether it should turn it off or on. And then it, as I said, turns the potentiometer either to maximum or minimum, depending whether it should be on or off. So the parts for this, again, there aren't a huge amount. There's an ESP8266 again. There's a temperature sensor. That's the exact one that I used. A resistor, because the internet told me I needed one. And a servo that turns the dial. And last Christmas, this ran my heating. And it worked. Like, I went away for a week and was constantly sending messages to Woodhouse to, like, has everything broken yet? It didn't. I count that as it's a stress test for me. But it made it really easy to actually work with it and, like, control the temperature and stuff. And I plan on making it a bit smarter so that it can predict when I get home, and based on the temperature, it can say, okay, I want it to be this temperature at this time, so I need to turn on now. So that's the story so far. But it's only just the beginning. This is a living project. It's going to keep growing and going. So what about the future? So I moved house a few months ago, and I don't have curtains anymore. I have blinds, so I'm going to automate all my blinds. That's going to look really weird when all the windows at once just, like, open and close. And the thermostat's different. It's a radio frequency one, so I can't just, like, attach the dial to it. I've got to do some hacking with that, which I've never done before, so it'll be really interesting. And then I want a third module type of data providers so that I can have data fed into the system about various things, such as light sensors, temperature sensors, and things like that. I want a system like IFTTT so that I can have recipes for certain things happening, so that if, for example, it's dark outside and my phone connects to the network, then it can turn on my lamps and close the blinds. And then natural language processing. I don't know if you noticed when I was doing the voice control stuff, I shouted a very specific command of Woodhouse, turn on lounge lamps. And it feels really forced. It doesn't feel natural. So I'd love to be able to just even throw in the word the, so it's Woodhouse, turn on the lounge lamps. It just feels a bit more conversational. And then have a unit in my car, not to control the car because that's a terrible idea, to control the music and contact the main hub and do stuff like that. And then more hardware, because I've really enjoyed doing hardware and learning this stuff. So, like, I've had an idea for how to have my own door lock, which is probably not a fantastic idea, but I'll probably do it anyway. And just various ideas that I'll come up with and play with. And I'm genuinely terrified at the prospect of home ownership. And it's not because of having to have a mortgage and be a grown-up and be responsible. It's because I'll burn the house down and that's my money. So at the start of this talk, I said I was lazy. I need to correct it. That's a wrong statement, obviously. I'm the ridiculous kind of lazy, where I'll spend hundreds and hundreds of hours working on stuff so that I don't have to do simple little things like turning on my lamps and closing my curtains. I'm basically the personification of this XKCD comic. But it goes further than that. So I'm not here just to show off all the cool stuff that I've built. At least I think it's cool. I'm here with the aim to inspire you. I want to show you that you can do some really, really cool stuff with JavaScript. It doesn't have to all be building web applications. We have a whole great ecosystem of stuff that we can do with JavaScript now. I've learned so much whilst working on this. I've learned a lot about JavaScript itself, just through having to use various parts that I wouldn't use in my day-to-day. I've learned ES6 from doing this. I've learned some stuff about UDP and some bits about hardware. I kept finding new things that I was interested in, and then going, okay, cool, I'm interested in that, and diving in and getting more out of it. I'd keep going. I was finding a lot of stuff that I liked. I even bought a 3D printer because of this. And it's great because it means that I can have more sort of freedom about making things when I have these ideas later on. It makes it a lot easier to build stuff. So if you were learning, I realized a great parallel whilst I was working on this talk. I really love like food and cooking. And if you were learning to cook, you wouldn't make things that you didn't like to eat because it's pointless. You'd want to cook things that you'll eat and you know whether it tastes good or not. So it's basically the same. If you're learning to build something, learning to use a technology, build something that you're interested in. If you have the opportunity, please build something that you're interested in. It can be as weird as you want. It doesn't have to be anything that's like useful for anyone else, but it'll keep you invested because you're interested in doing it. You can hack it, you can cut corners. It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you're learning stuff from it, you're building it for you. And you don't have to share it, but if you do, people will probably be interested. I didn't think anyone would be interested in my ridiculous home automation stuff because it's ridiculous. But people will be interested in, even if you just tell them, here's a weird project I've been working on. So thank you very much. I have my tweets there.